It's going to be positive in the long run, but only if, as Scott says, each of the feeder organizations feed in, the input and get involved in that whole thing. Scott being on the executive committee, he's got a good road into that whole council and where that thing's going. So please let him know what you think and speak up. One of the questions we were asked today on a kind of a survey thing was to rate ourselves on our attendance, but more importantly, our participation in the Governor's Council on Fire Prevention and Control. Same thing can be done for every organization. Are you here taking up a seat, getting a meal and a drink or two, and going home, or are you participating? Are you an active participant in the group? And that's what drives every good organization. A lot of good participants. So I encourage you to do that. Okay. I titled this thing "Death and Destruction from Fire." What are you doing about it? This is a question that the Commissioner's Office is asking me, us, quite frequently. They basically deal with, we have a problem, we have an issue, and they're saying, well, what is your solution? And I think all of us want to have all of our employees, staff, anybody in an organization, all participating to the point of making suggestions and solutions and offering up what it is you're doing about it. I did this, started this presentation prior to Monday morning when we had a 4-fatality morning in a residential home. But I went in today and I beefed it up a little bit because I get mad when I see some of that stuff. And you hear the background, and you can practically write the script before you hear all the details. Unfortunately, because what are we doing? Now I've got that in here somewhere. We're killing people and burning down buildings the same old way we've been doing for decades. We haven't really come up with any new exciting ways to do that. I mean, that's so unfortunate, and you just kind of get cranked up and get mad. Haven't we become a society that accepts death and destruction from fire? God, I hope not. I hope we never get to that point. But to a degree, I think we're there. And I got a few teaser slides, rhetorical questions in here just to make you think. Some of you might think I've gone off my rocker when you see a couple of the slides that I've got in here, but I'm doing this, and I'll tell you ahead of time, to make you think and maybe even comment a little as we go. So I say, if you believe the answer is no, we're not accepting death and destruction, why are we continuing to kill people and burn down buildings? The same reasons, the same way we've done it for years. I don't know the answer to that. I also put in a teaser, and this is really, if you get nothing else out of my presentation tonight, I'd really like you to try to understand my point about prevention, talking fire prevention, and what exactly is that, what does that mean, and, as opposed to the topics that we seem to throw out and talk about when we have fire prevention open houses and fire prevention talks and stuff like that. Most of what we talk about isn't preventing fire at all. It's after the fact. It's responding after the fact. So I really, and I'm giving away some of the answers to what I'm talking about here. But here's my point. This is a teaser, and some of you may know my good friend, Fire Chief from Faribault, Mike Mungie. And I'm stealing this from his line. He uses this all the time when he tried to build this theory. And it's basically, if you don't have the fire in the first place, you really don't need a smoke alarm. I know that's far-fetched. You really don't need a fire extinguisher. You don't need a fire sprinkler system. You don't need a CO alarm. You don't need 2 exits out of your house. Or to know how to stop, drop, and roll, or need to practice your escape plans. Because if you're never going to have a fire, if you don't, we don't need all that crap. Now, I know that's a little far-fetched. How many of you, this is an audience participation time, Paul, you put a little bit too much sleep into that pork chop. So I got to see you keep them going. But how many of you have smoke alarms in your homes? Come on, raise your hand. Okay, excellent. How about a fire extinguisher? Okay, in your car, in your garage, wherever. Okay, here's the tricky one. Fire sprinkler system in your home. Okay. You know where I'm going with that, don't you? Carbon monoxide alarm. 2 exits out of pretty much every room. You kind of know that. We've talked about that. How many of you have done stop, drop, and roll recently? Okay, so you know how to do it.
Sure, if I get up. Friday night.
How many of you have practiced on an escape plan with your family recently? Raise your hand. All right, come. Cool. Well, do you think you're going to have a fire, Scott? Do you plan to have a fire in your home? What are you doing all this stuff for then? I'm just obviously trying to draw the point, but is there some irony here? Most everybody, I think everybody, has a smoke alarm, but most of you don't have a sprinkler system. So, is that ironic? I don't know. In this group, maybe especially so. I don't know, but you want the alarm so you can get up and get out, but you don't want to protect the house by putting in a sprinkler system. You have a smoke alarm, but most of you haven't practiced the escape plan. So you want to be alerted to the fire, but you haven't done any practice, with getting your family out of the building. We have that as a problem out there. So just kind of doing a little teaser. Are you planning to have a fire in your home or not? Not sure. Fire prevention. Now this is audience participation. What are some of the topics you think of when I say fire prevention? I'm going to pick on John. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? I'm just going to bounce around a little bit.
Life safety.
Okay. Well.
Stuff away from heat sources.
Oh, man, now you look ahead.
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping, all right, good. Dan.
What Ralph said.
Yeah. Trained well. Zach.
Fire safe cigarettes.
Okay. Bill. Fire prevention, what do you think?
Housekeeping.
Okay, housekeeping. See, you guys are way too sharp, You got my point already, is that we need to be talking about the things that are going to prevent the fire, not what we're doing after the fire happens. And CO alarm is there for after there's a problem. A smoke alarm is there after there's a problem. A sprinkler system is there after there's a problem. Escape plans, stop, drop, and roll. Those are all post-fire equipment, events, whatever. But I really think that in terms of fire department open houses, or when we really talk fire safety, we most of the time go over to that category and talk about that. So enough of that, my harping on that. I think we really need to make sure that we're talking about heat sources, combustibles, and housekeeping, and the stuff that really is causing our fires. Things that burn, coming in contact with things that burn, things that are already, heating sources, flames, whatever, from candles, smoking materials, to wood stoves, to whatever, whatever your heat source. I mean, if you boil it down into the smallest element possible, I think you get down to stuff that burns too close to a flame of some kind, heat source of some kind. What else is there out of fire prevention? And that, again, I'm trying to make a point here and bringing it down to just the most basic element. What are some of the things that we can truly do to prevent a fire from occurring? You've already given a number of those things. I expected you to go off into, smoke alarms and all these other things before, but you're too sharp. So we'll just move on. And obviously, I'm not saying we should abandon the concepts of proper response after a fire occurs. We know that fires are still going to happen. We have to teach those. It's just unfortunately, most people, what do they say on the TV news when they're interviewed? I never thought it was going to happen to me. They really don't. So I'm just thinking we need to do a better job, all of us, of talking true, capital letters, prevention. And I think there are people in this room that do a wonderful job of that. I'm just thinking we all just need to kind of commit to doing a little better job we can. Okay? I want to talk about some fire fatalities. Why are we talking prevention? Because we're killing people. Went back, we were asked by the media after the Pequot Lakes Ideal Township fire the other morning, when's the last time we had 4 or more killed in Minnesota in one fire? Went back and just pulled up some data from our Fire of Minnesota reports. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of them. January 1, 1989, Reamer, 10. July 91, the Wendigo Lodge, 7. International Falls in 92, 4. Burnsville in 93, 4. St. James in 93, 6. St. Paul, 5. in 94. Moorhead 7 in 95. Brookwood Center 4. St. Cloud 4. Salon 6. See any dates in here that ring a bell? How about January 1? What's going on here? January 1, 89. January 1, 99, 10 years later. Salon 6. I happen to know about that fire a little bit. I was having breakfast after an all-night fire in Owatonna on New Year's Eve. Rick Kleiss, our now chief investigator, was our investigator at the time. We were having breakfast, and he got the call for the salon for 6 fatalities. Anyway, you know, the time of the year, the events that are going on, and of course 4 the other morning, Monday morning in Pequot Lakes. You might be wondering what the causes are. In 4 or more deaths over the last 16 years, smoking materials, number 1. Killing people the same old way we've always done. Smoking materials in 4 out of those fires. Possible electrical. Now, some of you out here have done fire investigations, and I'm not sure, you know, we don't want to call it undetermined because it's like, well, and I hate putting undetermined on fire before I hate it. Sometimes you just absolutely have to. But, you know, in the old days, there's a kind of a joke going around in the fire service circles from years gone by. You know, if you wasn't sure what happened, I put down electrical. And I hope we don't have that anymore, but we do, you know, have this possible electrical down there. Heating. What are the 3, Katie, what are the 3 leading causes of structure fires in Minnesota year after year after year? Remember? Yeah. Cooking, heating, and arson. So here's heating. Heating sources. Heat sources. Combustibles up to heat sources. 2 of those. Those are the multiples in there. And then arson, one undetermined, and then 1 gas explosion up St. Cloud. That's how we're killing our people. You see a lot of equipment stuff here. You see some exotic hazardous material, chemical something or other for the most part. You see any common thread through all these? Yeah, people, human behavior. We have the ability to control this stuff. Bottom line. You know, there's nothing like a 4-death fire to bring you back to reality. We were just starting our celebration for 2005. 3rd year in a row, new record, low per capita fire death rate. 3rd year in a row, 46, 43, and we're at 37 right now for 2005. 3rd year in a row, a new record each of those 3 years. And you know, we're just starting our get excited, celebrate time. And bang, you get 4 in 1 fire. We already had 3 this month. We're at 7 for the month of January. We aren't even out of January yet. We only had 37 the whole last year. So this is not a good start to 2006. That 37 is likely to be adjusted up by 1 or 2 or 3. Typically gets adjusted up because as we follow up with casualty reports from throughout the year with hospitals and burn centers, we'll get another 1 or 2 that we didn't know about. They passed on after they were transported a month or 2 after the fire or whatever. We also have some fire departments that wait till now to send in all the reports for the year. Typically, there's only a handful of fire reports that come in from those departments. That's why they wait for the year. All 3 years are record lows, so that's where we're at. But we're starting off 2006, which is a tough year. The good news, though, I mean, if you use numbers, you know, you can always find something good to talk about. The death rate nationwide is on a downward trend. The death rate statewide is on a downward trend, 2.45 down to 1.86 to 1.27. And I've got this slide was done up before the latest numbers, so that all the numbers for 2000s are under. But you get the point. They're going down. And the last 3 years being new records, it's going to be even lower than that. Where are they dying? 7 County Metro, roughly 54% of the state's population, 1/3 of the deaths. Greater Minnesota, 46% of the state's population, 2/3 of the deaths in Greater Minnesota. We talk about codes, we talk about fire departments that are coming up in the next few minutes. We'll start, I want you to kind of think back to what this says. 2/3 of the fires are in an area where it's less than half the population. How do we compare nationwide? We compare pretty good on deaths. We have a lower death rate in Minnesota than the national average. But for some reason, we like to burn up more valuable stuff. We burn up a little bit more. These are old figures, obviously. I just need to update this with national statistics. But when we burn it up, we burn up some big stuff. But that we can replace. The fire deaths, we'd rather be on the downside than that. Fire causes overall, I didn't know if Katie was going to go towards men, women, and children, or where she was going. I was trying to bait her a little bit. Mary Nockbar, when she was in our fire marshal's office, some of you remember Mary, before she became Mary Corso and went off to Washington State and whatever. She really started pushing this around, and I like to use it because when you look at all these human behaviors that cause fires, it really does come back to we ourselves are the ones that are causing these fires. So I promote that concept, get people thinking about it. Again, it's not equipment, it's not chemicals, materials, it's not stuff out there for the most part. It's men, women, and children. Cooking, these are the 3 leading causes of structure fires. Cooking, heating, and arson. They typically run 1, 2, 3, and 2 and 3 might switch one year, but the next year they go back. Cooking is just outstanding out there, way out in front. And I'm not sure what the deal is there, but human factor, we leave stuff in the oven, we leave stuff on the stove, we go to answer the phone, we go down to do laundry or whatever, and we burn up stuff in kitchens. So cooking turns out to be the big deal.
A lot of that is NFPA changed how what they call a cooking structure fire back in 2001. You burn your toast, that's a cooking structure. It used to be a smoke scare, now it's a structure fire. So that's skewed that a lot.
Absolutely right, of course, Steve. Any smoke produced, any fire within a structure of any size turned out to be what's called a structure fire. So we're not talking about entire buildings burning down here, but we are talking about smoke being emitted, smoke coming off something that isn't supposed to.
What we typically call food on the stove is now a cooking structure fire. Many of those would be a smoke scare. Something else.
And the officers on the rigs that have to do the fire reports, once you get into the structure fire, then you got to fill out a whole bunch more stuff. So they hate it. They love being able to code that smoke scare, right? But now they got to fill out a whole bunch more stuff. The data is trying to get at more into the causes, the root causes, and all that. So I mean, I understand that, but it has really increased the numbers. Fire fatalities. What are the causes? Not so much cooking, but certainly heating and arson, and what you can add into the mix almost all the time, not everyone, but add in smoking material and alcohol and or drugs. A lot of the fire deaths that happen across the state, across the country. You're gonna be right in a lot of cases. Here's where I hope to offend somebody. I call this stupid human tricks. Again, we're not coming up with unique and exciting new ways to kill ourselves in fires. And what we do when we do these stupid human tricks, instead of straight talk by fire officials about the human-caused fire, we talk about, oh, this is an accident and all these poor people. And please try to separate on the Pequot Lake situation here is so close and whatever, but talking in general, what do we do when people have no deaths, they have a fire in their house, they did a stupid human trick, and what do? We set up a fund for them at the bank, we donate stuff, we bring over food, and that's all wonderful. Absolutely, it's all wonderful. But, they did something stupid. I mean, come on, at some point we got to say, people, we got to quit doing this. Because they aren't all denying kinds of things. Some lead into deaths. Insurance companies got to pay. It's costing all of us, this as a society. It's costing us. All these fires are costing us. We're causing them ourselves. We're doing stupid stuff. Sometimes we got to own up to that. Taking personal responsibility for our actions. So If I didn't offend anybody there, why I missed the vote. Trying to get you after that, that sleep stuff. Trying to get you cranked up a little bit. All right, let's talk a little bit about fire codes. And I should be done by 10, really. State building code first adopted in 1972. State fire code first adopted in 75. There were municipalities that had local codes before that. And the last couple of code cycles, we've coordinated the adoption of both building codes and fire codes together at the same time at the state level. The state building code. This was alluded to by Scott when he talked about the work of the Governor's Council. State building code is applicable only where adopted. And there are currently 450 cities that do not adopt, they haven't adopted and don't enforce the building code. There are 1,538 townships that have not adopted the building code. And there are 67 counties that have not adopted and do not enforce the state building code. There's the numbers Scott was referring to on why do we have this as a problem? Why do we need to talk about this? Why do we need some consistency out there? Because they're not following the code. Now, you can argue about some of the specifics, but this is part of the issue. When the building code was put into statute, it specifically said these counties can opt out. And this is the number of cities, townships, and counties that have opted out of enforcing the building code.
They can't opt out of enforcing the fire code.
No.
Yeah, but I don't think they do that either.
Absolutely. Good point, yeah.
New construction, fire protection requirements, and state fire code. They can't opt out.
Right. So, when you look at the problem out there, you look at where the fires are occurring, where the injuries and the deaths are occurring, one of the things we look at, of course, right away is the code applicability to there. Where did the code fail? Well, if there's no code in the first place, it's not the code that fails. So what about the rest? What about these, do you suppose, do you just suppose, here's one of my first ties back to where the deaths are occurring. Do you just suppose in your wildest dreams that where we're seeing more deaths in greater Minnesota, previous slide, do you suppose that's where the no's are? More predominantly. Now, I live in Owatonna, which is in Steele County, which is just north of Des Moines. Some people think it is. Okay, I'm a greater Minnesota guy, all right? I'm not picking necessarily on greater Minnesota. I just talked some truth here. Greater Minnesota is impacted adversely in this situation, I believe. State Fire Code, Steve's point, State Fire Code is applicable statewide, period, end of story. Assumption by the citizens, though, is that the State Fire Code is being enforced statewide. By who? I don't know. Because the State Fire Marshal's Office actually has more coverage area that we cover, because nobody else does, geographically, than anybody else. And we don't have, we're doing just what we're mandated to do, and we're not covering all that stuff. Where are the fire inspectors? There are some out in greater Minnesota that, are doing good work, but greater Minnesota, by and large, is not where the majority of the enforcement is taking place, and it's primarily because the volunteer nature of the fire departments, the small nature of the cities that are out there. I'm not sure if I got a number, I think I do. On the number of cities out there, I think you might find that interesting. I want to do it right now, just so I make sure I don't forget it. No, I know I got it. Okay. Fire Marshal Division, let's give you a little bit of an update on our division. 2005 legislature added $400,000 to our base budget. We were here last year, we were probably whining about our budget, but we got $400,000. Ralph and Dan got a raise. Things are going well. We have been able, with that $400,000, to add 4 staff. Don't put dividing 4 into 400,000. Think we're paying them 100,000, because that is not the case. That's obviously all the other stuff too, and we're still seeing where this is going to fall out with increased expenses, things like that. And I've got a photo of 3 of the new staff in the next slide. 12/29, December 29th, 05, we did a little reorganization, more than a little reorganization. Reduced the number of supervisors in the division by 25%. That was a tough month or two for me to work through that. These are good people, good friends, and but it was something that had to be done over the course of the time. When we went from 63 staff to 44 staff, we did not reduce, during that 19 reduction, we didn't reduce any supervisors. We needed to do a little right sizing, downsizing, whatever you want to call it. So that's what happened. Through all that, through some tight budget times, we have absolutely found some efficiencies. Through necessity and also through technology. We've got some changes going on in our organization right now. We've got a fantastic staff working hard, doing more today than ever before, I think. Here's the three new staff. Dan is going under that. Let me talk about the fire service a little bit. Some of you may know all you need to know about the fire service, and others might be interested in some of it. There's about 20,000 firefighters in the state. 90% of those, approximately, are volunteer, part-time, paid on call, or a series of 12 or 13 other names that they call them. Essentially, it's all of those categories where they're not full-time career. So most of the state is staffed, run by volunteers. There are 789 fire departments in the state. I'm happy to say that 730 of them report their fire reports to us, which is 93%, and that blows every other state I know away. So we take that. Here's my number I was wanting to tell you about. There are 764 cities in Minnesota that have a population of less than 10,000 people. That's right off the League of Cities website. What do you suppose their budgets are, city level, in cities of 10,000 or less for fire department? Probably not a great deal. I mean, you see 789 fire departments, 764 cities under 10,000, there's a correlation there. We are predominantly a volunteer fire department area. Typically, volunteers are not going to get that heavy. Now, they do open houses, they do public education in schools. There are some wonderful programs out there in fire prevention with small fire departments, volunteer fire departments. Absolutely. But in terms of code enforcement and really getting out and doing those kinds of things, there's not much there. The historical staffing levels is in the response, is in the fire trucks and red trucks and sirens and going out the phone. Here's my prediction. By 2015, 100 of these fire departments are going to go away. There are so many requirements being added every year to these firefighters. In the good old days, they fought fire, and that's it. And then EMS came in, and then hazmat came in, and then terrorism came in, and then collapse structure rescue, and what's coming tomorrow? Bird flu. Who are you going to call in a town less than 10,000 when stuff hits the fan? Call the fire department. I mean, they're there. And they just get dumped on all the time. And the requirements on the firefighters is just heaping up. And I don't know about your association here, but in the groups you run around with, whether it's Lions, JCs, this group or church group or whatever, the volunteer time of people, I think nationwide is kind of slipping a little bit. We're not able to put in the volunteer time, the extra time beyond work and family, church and whatever that it used to be. Now I can't quantify that. I can't prove that. But I think that's what we see. And I think there's going to be a bunch of fire departments that are just going to close up their doors because they just can't meet all the requirements. Demands are increasing for training and attendance. The historical level, this is another good one. The historical level of independence from the city impacts a lot of local small fire departments. They like being separate. They don't really join in with this idea that they're a department of the city. They're kind of separate. Well, that's coming around to burn them. In the long run, it really is. I asked them, well, you're really not connected with the city. I said, well, who covers your insurance for your trucks and your liability when you're out on fires? Well, and they either don't know or then they tell me what the city does. A little bit of reality there. I'm not a my, not sure if it's the second month or third month, but it's Minnesota Fire Service. So I'm not beating up on them. I tell them the same thing. I love that group, but we are a little bit of our own worst enemy sometimes in the fire service because of what we like. Funding of these small departments is done by themselves. They have pancake breakfasts and they write for grants and they chip in their own money. They'll do anything practically to keep from asking the city for money, asking the taxpayers for money. And that turns around and bites them because, you know, then they don't get any money and there's no expectation there. And when they really need it, they don't get it from the cities. They're also reluctant to adopt standards and policies. They operate pretty loosely. A lot of these. Again, I'm just stating what I think are kind of facts, and they might be cold and hard, not trying to pick it up further. Fire prevention resources within fire departments. It's less than 5%, and I think it's closer probably to 1%, but it is 5%. Exceptions are cities like St. Paul, where they're doing lots of things in fire prevention and have for years and years and years. But I didn't come up with that number. Somebody came up with that a while back. I think Mary Knoxville did a survey a number of years ago, and at that time it was less than 5%. I think that the trend is reversing on staffing a little bit. In other words, I'm saying the staffing that is coming in full-time is coming in the area of fire prevention and administration, not adding lots of people into the response mode, not adding lots of people to the trucks. A lot of communities now, that as they grow, especially second-ring suburbs, as they grow, they're putting on a full-time chief, they're putting on a full-time fire marshal, or both. That's where they're adding the people. It's not necessarily for response. It's in the administrative training and fire prevention area, which is kind of a reverse trend. This does represent a change in the fire service, and change is a very scary time for some. I know it doesn't bother you guys, but fire service, that change is a little tough sometimes. You may have seen or heard about West St. Paul, South St. Paul, merging fire departments. They each have a fully paid career fire department. And now essentially merging. Long term, I'm sure they expect to save some money, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. But they're doing that. We're going to see countywide fire departments out in greater Minnesota. We're going to see regionalized sharing of equipment and things like that. We have to. We absolutely have to. Or we're not going to be able to survive on it. All right, I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly. I have the questions ready when I get to the end. Just tossed in, a while back I asked our inspector or supervisor staff what are the code violations? Because part of this prevention stuff, we can talk about fire service and fatalities and all this kind of stuff, but what are we seeing on the code enforcement side? What are the violations that are potentially causing problems, fires? Not so much deaths, because we don't inspect, we don't get out into it. For the most part, we don't get out into the residences where we're killing people. It's a whole other issue with problems. But that, my castle is my home, and you don't come in there, and that keeps us from doing something. When I ask you to ask yourself if you've ever seen any of these, as I go through the code violations, ask you, why do these keep showing up on our inspections? These are the top 10, so they're recurring. We're seeing them all over the place. And then I ask you the question to Commissioner Leslie and Commissioner Campion asked me, what are you doing about it? And I don't know what impact you have at your job, at your home, and your community. If you have some way to have an impact on some of this stuff, I would ask you to join us and try to work on that. Number 10, housekeeping. This happens to be in the school. I'm not sure, but I think they got an order to clean it up.
That's sprinkler system? That's sprinkler?
I don't think so.
What's the address?
There's a lead. All right, so housekeeping. Now, this happens to be a school, but you all know that we have these kinds of conditions, single-family residences and apartments, on and on and on, housekeeping.
State office.
Number 9 is egress windows. We write up a lot where we have sleeping. We don't have the right egress windows. We do a lot of inspections on hotels, resorts, a lot of residential kinds of areas. Daycare homes, daycare centers, foster care centers, assisted living, all those kinds of things. Number 9 on our hit parade is egress windows. Storage of mechanical rooms, back to housekeeping. the storage specifically here in mechanical rooms. What's allowed in a mechanical room for storage? Nothing. There's a whole bunch of nothing right there. But how many buildings are built with an appropriate amount, enough storage rooms? None. I mean, even if you think you've got a lot of storage, it doesn't take long, but we accumulate. But who's doing that? Men, women, and children. We're the ones that are putting that stuff in there. Not supposed to be in there. Why? Combustibles, near what? Heating source. Fire alarm system testing. We can't seem to get it into people's heads that on an annual basis you can put on your calendar, have the stupid fire alarm system tested. Call, we have to go in and order it to be done. I don't understand that. Same thing happens with sprinkler systems, a lot of you will know. We're back to storage. We're not back to, this one's kind of an aisle in a warehouse, that kind of thing, but, well, it's just going to be there for a little while. Guess when the fire's out? Just in a little while. It's electrical violations, this is, open outlet or open junction box, electrical wiring. Steve and St. Paul, wiring, is that a continual problem, or has that gotten better over the years in your tenure?
Electricians just don't look out.
Yeah. Work's done and they just don't do it, and we have hazards. Number 4, corrective compliance listing. This we get into a little more maybe in healthcare facilities, licensed facilities, which we do a lot of. Looking for the right listing, UL listing or independent laboratory testing, looking for the right listing. Now, some of you that can actually see that and read that, you'll catch that this is a little bit of a problem, what I showed you right here. I can't explain it. This is a Canadian SA, Canadian Safety Administration or something like that. That says for household use only. All right, what's the UL listed? For household and commercial use only. Interesting. Somebody pointed that out on me when I used it last time, so now I can talk about it. I didn't catch it the first time. But using the proper appliance for the proper type of use. Proper exits. We do a lot of schools. I think it's getting better, but they're not trying to keep kids in. They're trying to keep kids from getting out. They're trying to keep them coming in, from the outside or whatever. But they just, this is just who's doing this kind of stuff? Men, women, and children. Smoke alarms, not present, not tested. And number 1 reason, David Letterman's. Back to electrical again. Extension cords are for what? Temporary use. Temporary use. Anybody here got an extension cord that's been in use for more than a month? In the same location? I don't know, do we use 30 days, 90 days, 7 days? Up to the inspector, I don't know. Extension cords are not designed to carry a constant heat load. Now, you got all kinds of things, circuit breaker, panels, doodads, there's all kinds of things. Of course, we see them plugged into each other, so they can reach all the way to where they want to go. But there's just all kinds of stuff in the extension cords. And again, that just seems to be common. Because they'll go in, they'll get it ordered out, it'll be gone, and you can go back in a month and you'll see it back. I don't know what to do about that. What are you doing about it? I don't know what to do about that. We can't, we have to give them options. Their option is to put in another outlet where they need it. That takes time and money, and it just doesn't happen. They'd rather get a violation notice, pull it out, we come back and inspect, and then they'll put it back after we're gone. Human behavior. Stupid human tricks. What do I think is going to happen in the future? I think, and I certainly hope, and I'll tell you, I'll admit to you right now, I stand up here and I talk all about this residential sprinkler stuff. I do not have sprinklers in my home. I'm not proud of it. Apathetic, whatever. I don't know.
Address?
Ralph? Leave him alone. I think that's indicative of the worst form of apathy or whatever there is. There's a guy out promoting this stuff, and I haven't retrofitted my house to it for it. I don't have a good excuse. I just don't. You're going to forget all the time. Pardon me?
You're going to prevent it all.
You damn it. Steve brought up fire resistant, I think earlier, fire resistant cigarettes. I think that's coming nationwide. The technology is there. The New York, California, Utah, they've proven that this isn't going to run the state into bankruptcy because of lost revenue on sales tax and whatever. It's a health, so I mean, I think that's coming. There'll be technological improvements in the next years that, some that are being developed now we don't even know about, that will just totally, shake the world kind of thing. That's one easy one to predict because I have no specificity. Regionalized fire department, absolutely, I think that's going to come. You're going to see some more of these mergers. New Hope and Crystal a few years ago merged into West Metro. You're going to see that kind of stuff. Steve Conroy, when he was fire chief in St. Paul, years ago, said,
Way before my time.
yeah. He predicted countywide fire departments. He said that's where we ought to be going. I mean, he was so far ahead of his time or out of his mind, whichever. I don't know. But that's what's coming. We have, well, I'll pick on Freeborn County, neighbors of mine. There's about 20 fire departments in Freeborn County. And, the population is not what it is probably in the city we're in right now. I mean, I don't know, we got to do something about that. We can't, 789 departments cannot continue to operate this thing. It's just not going to work. I think there's going to be an increased number of career firefighters, but not in the big fire departments that are, that's not where they're going. They're going to be going into these growing communities. They're going to be going into these regionalized countywide fire departments. They're going to be going in as chiefs, as fire marshals, as public educators, as fire inspectors, things like that. That's where the careers will be going. Not into the truck crews, and I don't know what's going to happen in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, Rochester, St. Cloud, in terms of the full-time staff. But that's going to be a tough sell to do much increasing on that side. And bottom line is, the three major causes of fire are going to remain. I don't know how we can get over that. Questions? Yes, sir.
I guess my question in terms of this whole moving toward fire prevention might be is through the governor's council, if you toyed with any of the ideas of our MnSCU or University of Minnesota systems, either getting involved with fire research or even for that matter, establishing a degree program around fire protection engineering. I mean, that might be something to just keep in front of them, and you never know where that will take.
Sure. I would agree with that. That this governor's council can talk about these things. I think the appropriate means for them to do is to take subjects like that and develop white paper. Here we got all this diverse input. Here's all the issues, put it in a few pages, but then it's got to go back to all the member organizations to do something with. Because quite frankly, the statewide enforcement building code or whatever, Tom DeWacom, the state building official, myself are at that, are at these meetings. And we can't, as an agency, move forward with something like that. I mean, that's a little too hot for state government to promote itself. And that's going to have to come back out. And the council's not going to do it, so it's going to have to come back out to groups like this to say, hey, we want, Katie, I think you're asking about that. Well, where's this going to go? What's the next step? Who's going to take this forward? I mean, it's going to be fire marshal associations or building official associations. They're the ones that are going to have to move that forward. Get a lobbyist and get some of that stuff moving. And it's MnSCU or it's this council that can do white paper, and then somebody picks up on an idea and they'll start working on that. Some of those ideas. Other questions? Tom?
Jerry, I don't have a question, but I've got a comment on your first bullet item under future fire sprinklers routinely in homes. Last week, the city of Scottsdale just celebrated its 20th anniversary of residential fire sprinklers.
Yeah.
That is put it in perspective.
Like where the hell have we been?
Been around for 20 years.
They have so much data, and the data is just, I didn't put it in here, the data will just blow you away with the reduction in fires, in fire loss, and the damages water damage, we all fight that. You guys fight that one anyway. It's just amazing. And that the housing stock that has gone up down there, it's really a cool story.
It is, because they had a news report on one of the channels down there. They interviewed some people that just purchased homes in Scottsdale recently. And to an exact number, everybody said, I had no idea that I was purchasing a home with residential sprinklers in it. But again, that same exact number came back and said, I'm really glad that they're in there now. They've had incidents or something happened, but they're grateful after the fact, but they had no idea when they were purchasing the home that they were purchasing sprinklers.
Well, I'm not sure, I can't remember if it was through the Governor's Council, but there was an idea a few years ago on just putting out the required building officials to just give a prospective owner or every new building permit, information about sprinklering their home. And that was too politically hot to move forward, so. There's stories out there like that. We hear stories about developers that are more likely, you can tell me if this is right or wrong, developers out there that are more likely, if they're going to do a whole development and they're going to sprinkle everything and they get some concessions from the city on street width and the water main size, if you can tie that all together, that's, could be a better package for developers and things like that. But, typically they end up with the bottom line is what's the cost. What I just enjoy talking about is why people will spend $3,000 on their lawn sprinkler system and they won't even consider putting $3,000 into a fire sprinkler system in their home. I don't have a lawn sprinkler system.
Good save.
Other questions? I appreciate your time and your attention and your participation, because that's what makes the organization strong. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry. Great presentation, good information. Our next meeting is in February. We're still batting around the topic on it, but it'll be out shortly, and we're also trying to improve the website to try to get that more updated soon. So we're working on that. We haven't forgotten it. When that gets back, we're going to address that really shortly. So thanks for coming. Drive home safely. Open bar.
So next fall, I can look for you on TV.
Well, that's my plan, but I don't know if it'll work out. I mean, in regards to timing, normally how that works, you're on the radar, and you're,